Hello everyone, and thank you for being here with me today. Activists all around the world who are advocating for the future of humanity have, in recent years, been looking into the possible long-term effects of water as a commodity. The effectiveness of privatizing water, an essential resource for all living things, is highly disputed regarding whether it results in increased accessibility. It's important for people to remain informed about the consequences and the effects of the privatization of an essential resource by various corporations and governments on people and the natural world. In recent years, this topic has been brought to my attention, and I've spent a fair amount of time watching documentaries and reading literature on the subject. Nearly all of my life has been spent in and around the water. I was a competitive swimmer in my youth, a lifeguard in my young adulthood, and for the last 6 years, I have been a PADI dive master for a local scuba shop. Every trip I've ever taken has always been to the beach or to the lake or somewhere near a body of water. I spend so much time just enjoying nature. My interest in this subject, though, began when I watched this documentary called Flow for the Love of Water. This documentary touches on several issues related to the privatization of water and how this affects communities and individuals in developing and underdeveloped countries. In this presentation, I will discuss how water was intended to expand water service coverage and how it affects the cleanliness and quality of drinking water and the resources it is derived from, and how all of this affects the poor. The intention of privatizing water is said to have been proper allocation of scarce resources in order to keep up with an ever-growing population. People generally believe that water is a human right, not just a privilege. According to an article by Sylvia Caesar, access to clean, usable drinking water is the most essential component in the fight against poverty and hunger. Over 600 million people still suffer from water scarcity around the world, most often in developing countries where water resources are limited. And if they do have access, sometimes corporations will locate their factories there to minimize the bottom line, which can result in nearby water resources becoming polluted. Globalization has resulted in a worldwide race to the bottom, where governments will compete for the institution of corporate factories in their country to increase their tax revenue. This results in governments competing with increasingly lower minimum wages, higher tax breaks, and more leniency on environmental laws and regulations. For example, Pepsi, Coca-Cola, and Nestle were named top polluters in terms of plastics and byproduct waste being found in water because of irresponsible and unsustainable ecological practices. This type of pollution is not only irresponsible and unsustainable for the planet, but also harming the people and animals that inhabit it as well. Not only are natural water resources at risk, but the less stringent regulations on bottled water have caused copious amounts of controversy over the years. There is no agency that oversees the monitoring of bottled water and how it is treated. This results in possibly harmful long-term effects on humans, along with the dramatic increase of plastic waste as well. Here you will see images from the documentary mentioned earlier about factories and corporations polluting water resources for underdeveloped communities. And you will also see images of single-use plastics being found near water resources all over the world. The UN estimated that it would require funds of $30 billion a year to provide clean, accessible drinking water to the entire planet, while in the previous year, the world spent $90 billion on bottled water. When water pollution happens in poorer countries, the people that live there are forced to purchase water from other places rather than obtaining it from a natural source. In these countries, it is common for people to not have the ability to purchase water because they can't afford it. A growing concern is that eventually the global water supply will become monopolized. For example, in Michigan, there was a stream that flowed through a community of land owned by residents that lived in that town. These people required the water in order to water their farms, their land, and their livestock. This was until Nestle put a factory upstream and the water became polluted and eventually the stream just dried up. This begs the question, who owns the stream? Is it ethical to allow Nestle to dry up a water resource that once supported the people whose land it ran through? The ongoing debate about who owns the water is still very pertinent, and there are water conferences being held to discuss this. There are people advocating every day for the universal right to clean, drinkable water. And if anyone feels that this is important as I do, feel free to donate at forloveofwater.org.